We have collected up from the folks that we work with. We've collected up a list of questions that we can ask just in case the audience is feeling shy, but I would really prefer to open the floor up to the audience first. So is there anybody out there who is interested? Just raise your hand or unmute, speak up, please ask your question.
I'd love to ask a question. Sure.
Yes.
So at the end of 2024, we wrapped up a $12 million capital campaign, and now we're talking donor recognition, donor walls. And I'm wondering what your best advice is for listing our donors alphabetically by giving level, and specifically how you denote employee givers and give them some sort of recognition as well.
That's a great question, Emily. So Pride Hive Mind, anybody want to jump on this one? Jake, Jenna, Jim, anybody?
You start, Mary, or Jenna.
Okay, well, I'm unmuted. So honestly, I don't know that there's any way to say that one way is better than the other. It's going to be a question of what makes sense and what's most meaningful in your community. If there are particular individuals who showed a tremendous amount of leadership and self-sacrifice with the level of their giving, we certainly want to recognize them in a more prominent way than others. So, like if somebody gave you $1 million, you may want to recognize them in a bigger way than somebody who gave you $10,000. At the same time, recognize that the degree of self-sacrifice that person had is always, a $10,000 gift for one person may feel sacrificial, whereas a $10,000 gift for someone else may just be inconsequential. So Jenna, Jake, you got any other points of view? This one's always a tough one.
I'll chime in just even a little more basic than what Mary's already shared. So first and foremost, do you have any gift policies at your institution, right? Is there any precedent for this in prior campaigns? Did you make any specific promises to the donors as you were soliciting those gifts? So if there was, and assuming there are multiple team members, right, that were working on those gifts, what were the promises made to each of those donors at different levels? I think that we've got to make sure we have all that documented and that we're delivering on the promises that were made, first and foremost. And then I think very basic, I like to do it by level and then alphabetic order within that. You're never going to list like the specific dollar amount, but putting a level with a range also helps you moving forward, right? So it lets other people see themselves aspirationally giving at the same kind of level as the peers that are noted on that document. And then I think Mary touched on this just a little bit. How long and where are you keeping those recognitions? Is this just in your honor roll of donors? Is it on your website? That lifetime can look a little different. Are you going to print another newsletter in a month? Well, that might, you might start all over. So again, I think it goes back to the planning and the promises that were already made or what precedent your organization might have as well. Hope that helps, Emily.
Yeah, last thing on this, and we'll go straight to Lisa Cobb's questions. We have to remember that recognition is for the charity, not the donor. And I know that sounds counterintuitive. Stewardship is for the donor. Stewardship are the things that you do to make the donor feel great and want to give again and demonstrate impact and make sure that they stay in your group. Recognition is hopefully public and visible and obvious and waves a flag and draws attention to your program of like, look at all the wonderful people we have supporting us. So if you're able to segment them out by giving level and have some high profile names, or even just a number of names, that are above $100,000 or above, $250,000 or even above 10,000, you have a good listing there. That will inspire others also to give, because they're like, okay, there's quite a lot of people here that maybe I know, maybe I don't. But if there's this many people who've committed this much money to this cause, they might be doing something right. And just the endorsement of others might tip the scales for me to want to support that organization also. And that tends to help perpetuate more gifts. So if you can recognize people big and visibly, again, most of the recognition that we work, it does help in a stewardship way, but it's for the charity primarily and less for the donor.
That's an excellent point, Jake. That it's for the organization and not for the donor. So Lisa is full of questions today. So let's see. Well, I'll start with your first one. So it says, what is the best practice to approach current donors regarding making a capital gift, but not wanting to lose their annual gift? Do we ask for both annual and capital? I'll make my answer short and sweet. Yes. Anybody else?
Yes.
Yeah. Jake, go first.
Okay. So when we're in campaign mode, okay, making sure I'm unmuted. When we're in campaign mode, like the obvious best practice is like, can we get all the dollars to fit into one big bucket, because it's simple, and that way we can kind of make a promise to our donor base of like, hey, this is our one ask for the year or for the next 3 years for the campaign. We're not going to come and hit you back up. A lot of organizations have it segmented where they do have an annual operating budget or their annual fund or their annual campaign that supports like $70,000 a year, and they have to rely on that to kind of keep the lights on, pay salaries, keep the doors open, all of that. But then they're like, well, we have these capital, or we're going to buy a thing, whether that's bricks and mortar equipment or some sort of an investment that sets us up for the future. We want to do this, but we can't stop what we're doing without losing some of the things that we already have in progress. So our best recommendation, if it's possible, is to combine it into one large ask and kind of talk about how we're segmenting that. We can also use it as an extension. Like, for example, if someone gives an annual gift of $5,000 and we want them to pledge a campaign gift of $25,000, we would ask then for a $30,000 gift and acknowledge during that ask that there is a component of the annual gifts that they always give. We'd love to have you increase it by $25,000, apply that $25,000 specifically towards this new capital need that we're doing, but then continue your support of us. Most donors pretty responsive to that. You know, even if it's the case where they're like, no, we're truly only going to do 25 this year. It's like, okay, great. Well, that's going to be a $20,000 gift towards this, and then 5,000 towards this. Or they could designate it and say, you know, we're going to skip our contribution to the annual campaign and go all in for the capital. You're going to get different responses, but most donors that we've seen, especially with our own client base, are totally fine expanding and doing something a little bit special, a little bit different in those modes when you're in campaign mode. So from a principle standpoint, we just want to avoid going back and poking the donor and asking for more stuff. Our best case scenario, one ask, the rest is just stewardship, impact updates, thank yous. Jenna, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, perfect answer. Very in line with what I would say. Yes, and always. Lisa, I think the beautiful thing is if you have a donor who is committed to your annual fund, they already know the importance of that support, and they also understand and trust your leadership to put the money where it is most needed. So I think, like all conversations with donors, you start with gratitude for that unrestricted annual support that they've offered for however many years. And just like Jake said, you build out your proposals as a comprehensive proposal, and you highlight the importance and the reliance that you have on their unrestricted annual support. This other thing is a great new opportunity that you think is a perfect fit for them, but you roll it all into one comprehensive ask. It's in general why I prefer that we talk about campaigns as comprehensive campaigns. And just like you're asking them to increase their gift to the capital effort, you're asking them to increase their gift and maybe pledge over multiple years that annual element as well, so that you're getting a bigger ask. It's helping all of your teams. This comes up a lot in higher ed and like large hospital fundraising, where you have sort of a segmented team of fundraisers, right? And you've got your annual fund team and you've got your major gifts team. The reality is we're all working with the same donors and all of our goals are interconnected. So I love that you're thinking about the annual fund and thinking about elevating it along with all the other big exciting stuff going on your campus. Good stuff.
Yeah, at least I would echo that piece about, especially if the donor wants or needs to spread the capital pledge out over multiple years, go ahead and ask them for their regular annual gift also over those years. So if they normally give you $1,000 a year and they want to spread their capital pledge over 3 years, ask them for $3,000 to go along with that capital pledge that will be spread out over those 3 years. I've actually had great success in that, because then people are like, oh yeah, I was gonna give that anyway, but then you have it on paper as a pledge, and you can, instead of going back and asking them each year for their annual gift, you're able to just thank them each year as they send in their pledge payments, and that really does a lot to the donor bond. So, okay, you had more questions. Any best practices around efforts to convert current and or lapsed members of our science center to becoming donors? So this is a membership to donor conversion. Is that what I'm understanding, Lisa?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. Anybody in the Pride Hive Mind got great membership conversion experience?
So I have a little with the arts background, and I know Mary can speak to that too, right? With symphony experience. I think it starts with some cultivation and a little bit of discovery, because if I'm a member, I am getting something in exchange for what I may or may not even see as a gift to your organization, right? Like I purchased a membership because I want access to whatever. And oftentimes we see it as a donation, and we don't necessarily communicate or educate our members about the way that that is documented. And so that's kind of a learning curve, first of all, for some of your members. And then I think it's about identifying, is this the only thing that they're passionate about? Is this the only way that they're going to connect to your organization? Or are there other programs? Are there other opportunities that you could bridge the gap for them to come out of just that membership relationship? And so I think, like any donor, it's going to start with a little bit of discovery. And so lead with gratitude, offer coffee, have a conversation, and ask a whole lot of questions, right? Like, why did they become a member? How long have they been a member? Lisa, you're still new enough, I think, that you get to play the new girl card, right? So you can dig in a little bit on their history and their passions. Are they members of other organizations in the area? What's their background in work? Like, are there other things that can help you identify some passion points that you can lean in on?
Yeah, I love
Yeah.
the new
Go ahead,
answer.
Jake.
Like you always jump in with, like, even if you've been at a job somewhere like 18 months, you can call and be like, oh yeah, I just started, I haven't met a lot of people yet. So I'm just doing some outreach to kind of learn a little bit more about our membership, learn a little more about our donor base, or what, insert phrase here. But that's an easy card to play, is like, you have to have a reason to have reached out. And that's just such an awesome and simple one to use. The one other thing that I'll say, just again, looking at principles of what we're trying to achieve, is when we can make giving, especially to a giving club or like a monthly donation program or an annual program, feel like joining and not giving, you tend to get people for longer. So people who are interested inherently in memberships, whereas like, I'm going to pay on a regular basis and then I'm going to get something out of it, we can apply that same psychology of like fellowship and tribalism and in-group behavior and surrounding ourselves to something that we're all interested in, to giving as well, and make giving feel like joining. So we say, hey, we'd love to have you join our Cornerstone Club, our Emerald Society, our whatever. In exchange for this, which is, you pay this much in donations per year, you get the following perks and you get the following information. So you can build out things that are non-cash value so that you're still tax deductible, it's still a donation. But again, making people feel like it's a membership and that they are getting something in exchange. And you'll find over time that it's kind of a mix. Some people just want the membership perks, some people want to give. But for us, it's all money that counts the same and supports the same wonderful work that we're doing regardless. The dollars are identical. So we're going to capture different groups of people based on their intentions there. But just whatever we can do to make giving feel like joining as opposed to just a transaction always can help us. I'm sorry to interrupt, Mary. What were you going to say?
No, I was so the time that I spent in performing arts, there was like a performance, For us, it was not the sort of thing that folks might be coming through a museum any day of the week. There was like a performance, and so I needed to time the ask to get people to convert with those performances, because like that was whenever the people, they just had a really positive experience. They've had a wonderful evening out with their loved ones. And if I was going to convert them to a donor, then I needed to have something compelling that happened along with that experience, and that was also low friction. So, you know, this is going to seem high tech or low tech, depending on how you look at it. But, you know, we spent some time, it was part of a marketing effort that we did. Also, we spent some time with focus groups of people who were symphony attendees, finding out, you know, how they felt about the symphony, and, you know, what would inspire them to give to the symphony. And ultimately, the thing that came out of our focus groups was that people wanted to pay that forward for others. So like I had a free performance for fourth graders that I needed funding for. And so that was usually the like scan this QR code or text to give. But I made sure that it was a giving program where I captured a lot of contact information from them, and also made sure to steward those quickie donors really well, because then I could, if I stewarded them really well, then I could, like Jake was saying, convert them to monthly donors because they like that in-group feeling. But I don't know if that'll trigger some thoughts and ideas for you there. Your next question is a little bit, I might need some clarification. It just says our spring appeal is not strong. Any suggestions for the future? Could you clarify what you mean by not strong? Like you're not having strong response to it?
Correct. Yeah, it's the like we do fundraising in the fall, and that raises like almost $30,000, and then our end of the year appeal is like 30,000, and then this one is like 3,000. So, and it's
is that like every year it's that way?
Well, I'm not sure because I'm new, but I think so.
Can I ask one clarifying question, Lisa?
Yeah, go ahead, Jake.
Like we know that for mail appeals, like the return is around, like it costs about 25 cents to raise $1 if they are current donors and have given before. If they are new donors, the average cost to raise $1 is $1.25. So your like capture mechanism is often a loss, but if you can get people to continue to give, or you can capture them some other way and then go appeal, you can make money. But people say, well, my appeal didn't work this year. So the question that we always try to ask is, was this a bot mailing list? Is this lapsed donors? Is it current donors? Is it last year's donors? Like what list are we targeting? Because that makes a huge difference in the response rate.
Yeah, thank you. It's current donors, but already from this fiscal year. So they've already given one gift. Might be some lapsed donors, but it's reaching out to that membership, those people who don't, you know, who give in a different way. So kind of, it's almost like, yeah, like they would be new donors. So that makes sense that it's a little bit more challenging.
Yeah.
So.
And if they've already given once in the same year too, like best practice is not to hit them more than once in a year. So if you get them to an event, not to ask again. If you have asked them, not to try to get them to buy an event ticket, like, yeah, this is like, obviously it's like big sweeping changes you might have to make if that's the case. But if they've already given something, then it's like, okay, let's either try to steward them the rest of the year, and then around the 11-month mark from their past gift or interaction or event ticket or whatever, then we try to upgrade and move them. But it's tough when I've already given, and then only thing that I get for the next thing is just a piece of paper. It's like, that's not super persuasive. It's super low friction and it's easy because you can do it in mass and from your office. It's kind of like the safety hide behind your desk fundraising. I'm not saying that's what you're doing. You probably inherited this process, certainly. But if we can humanize the interactions following the initial ask or following that first gift that we get, the second year we're much more able to grab and upgrade and kind of move people along. But we have to kind of move into that human touch. I'm curious if there's any other thoughts from the Pride team, but that would be kind of my initial gut, not knowing as much context as well.
Yeah, Lisa, again, because you are kind of newish to this specific process, I would encourage you to do some pretty deep assessment of who did respond to the appeal. Because if you start to peel away those layers of segmentation, you might see that it was actually more successful with a specific portion of your audience, right? Maybe this was a really good recapture appeal for those folks that were lapsed on that list. Maybe the folks that did respond gave a second gift. And so you can start to analyze why they gave again, what triggered that response from this appeal. So I think kind of uncovering like who responded is a good thing. The other thing I know when I was doing mail appeals, especially that spring to fiscal year end, there were a lot of our donors that would hang on to their reply envelopes from older appeals. And so they may not respond within like the normal time frame, but one of those envelopes is going to show up with your end of year gift, right? Or it's going to come back in December because they just hung on to it until it was their timing. That's a really great thing to note in your database that like, hey, they held on to this from spring, but they give in December. And starting to learn people's preferred timelines will help you hone in on who needs to be targeted in which appeals throughout your year. I like annual appeals. Sorry.
Yeah. No, and some people do give in July, so that's great. And you all gave me a great nugget because I kind of thought it was like it was okay to ask people multiple times again. Like I used to only ask them once before, like if they'd given they come off the list. But yeah, I thought in this day and age it was like you can just keep on asking. So that was a good nugget. Thank you. I will get off and let other people ask questions. Thanks so much for the help.
Great questions, Lisa.
Yeah, absolutely. So anybody else out there got questions? Keeping an eye on the chat over here. I haven't seen any more pop up, but if anyone would like to come off mute and chime in, I'd love to give you a chance to do that now.
We have a few user submitted in advance type questions that we want to try to get to for the people who said they could not be here but still wanted to ask stuff.
Yeah. All right. Well, I will switch over to those. So, all right, here's one that really gets at the heart of both the art and the science of doing this sort of work. What are some of the most important considerations to take into account when determining naming opportunities values? We actually got this question twice. One was kind of in more plain language. How do I know how much a space is worth when setting naming opportunities? So whenever we're figuring out what sorts of gifts should be recognized with which spaces in our naming opportunities. Jake, Jenna, you want to take that one?
Ooh, this is a hard question. This is like advanced kind of stuff. This is like I'm not going to give the it depends answer, but it depends. I'll give you some formulaic stuff that's a little bit more concrete. So our general recommendation is to start with floor and ceiling. It's like, well, it's hard to pick where we land with the ones in the middle, but we need to know what our top gift is and our bottom gift is for naming specifically. Some organizations will name things for as little as $25,000 based on inflation and just availability of top level gifts. We will probably recommend that you push that to 50 at the absolute lowest, maybe even 100, depending on how big your charity and how big your space is. If $100,000 is the biggest gift you've ever gotten and you're so excited to name your whole center for 100,000, and then you realize in 2 years you've named your center and you're like, crap, we really could use like a $500,000 gift. I don't know what the opposite of future proofing. You're future shooting yourself in the foot by doing that. So we say, okay, 50,000 is the floor on average. There could be a compelling argument to push that up or down, but we'll call it 50,000. So your smallest possible named space, your tiniest room would be at $50,000, your lowest amount. You have the most of those. Maybe you have 20 of those. This can also be true for programs. If you're like, we don't have a building, totally fine. Your cheapest and easiest program, you can name for $50,000. Maybe it costs $10,000 to operate that program a year, and you can name it for 5 years for the full 50,000. And at the end of that period, the donor gets first right of refusal to renew for another 5 years, or it goes back into the pool. For your top gift, there's like some general standards about how big the gift is in relation to the whole project. So say the building is a $5 million building. You definitely don't want to name that building for anything less than $1 million. There could be an argument made for maybe even a $2 million gift is probably more appropriate, or a 2.5. But if you name your biggest gift and you put someone's name on the outside of a building for less than $1 million, you just have so much volume to make up to be able to get to that $5 million total. So you kind of look at the top number that you need for the project, for the campaign, for the whatever, and then set it at like 15 to 40%. That's going to be a pretty wide range with some flexibility in there of your overall campaign total for that lead gift. That gives you your floor and your ceiling. Then you can go through and figure out the programs and spaces that you have available. And it's based on two factors. It's one is like the price and size and like the expense of that space. And second is the visibility. Example would be like a lobby may not have a lot of specialized equipment. Maybe it's not that big, but everybody's going to see the lobby. So the naming rights for that might be bumped up compared to like an exam room, which is going to have very expensive equipment, or an operating room. But unless you're an employee, you probably don't even see that at all unless you're under anesthesia. So that may be a more expensive room, but you're going to name it for a little bit less because there's less foot traffic for that. So those are some soft rules. And then you kind of just, it's like a puzzle. You kind of play it all the way down. Well, we need about 3 gifts at this size, and then 5 here, and then 10 here. Final rule I'll give you, and then I want to hear Jenna and Mary's thoughts as well, is you want to have more naming opportunities in value than you do campaign total. So if your campaign is $5 million, you don't want exactly 5 million in naming opportunities. And you'd be like, we did it. We named all the stuff. We raised exactly the amount of money that we want. For multiple reasons, for being able to go over goal and also have some leftover post-campaign, you probably want to exceed your $5 million by at least 30% or so. So if you were to truly name everything, you might end up with 7 or 8 million on the top end. So that gives you some flexibility. And that way, when your menu gets small toward the end and you only have a couple of gifts left, there's not just like one option. Like this donor wants to give 250,000, but you're like, well, we've only got $100,000 naming opportunity left. It's like, well, no, we really would like to have had a couple more options in the top end, just in case we get some big gifts late that we can award to those donors. So those are kind of my general rules that I use, but I'd love to hear just the perspective from the other team members as well.
Yeah, so I will underscore what Jake said. It is all relative, right? If this is your first campaign, if this is a small organization and you're looking at a $2 to $3 million goal versus some of our bigger clients who are working towards 75, 100 million, it's going to be vastly different the way that you lay this out and plan for it. This is all part of that really important before the ask work that we do in development and in leadership. So first, is there a policy at your organization? I'm gonna say it again. If you don't have one, ask us. We can help you build a gift acceptance policy and a naming policy. Is there precedent? Do you have a building that was named on campus for $10,000? How do we translate that into this new campaign? And what kind of conversation are we going to have with a donor that got that gift, got that recognition for a real low price in the last campaign compared to the inflation that we're going to impose on them in this campaign, right? So we have to be prepared to navigate those conversations with all of our donors as well. So is there a policy? Is there precedent? How does that weigh into what we're doing now? And then Jake talked a lot about like the physical spaces. I want to talk a little bit about programming and the non-tangible things that we might be wanting to name for our donors. So are you building any endowments as part of your campaign? Are you seeking any named positions for staff members, right? We're working with a client that has a fully mobile operation. Their only permanent bricks and mortar space is like a warehouse and an office. So we're not going to name anything in their physical spaces. They don't really have clients there. They don't have donors that come there. It wouldn't have a whole lot of meaning in the grand scheme of things. So we're getting really creative. We're naming the physical things that come out at all of their mobile sites. So, patient comfort. Well, that translates to chairs, fans, heaters, tents. These are the sort of tangible things that are at all of their mobile operations. In an intangible, we know that there are some important education and wellness programs that they produce, and we want to package those and make them marketable to a prospective donor. So we're navigating what is the visibility of the program, right? What is the client number that's going to be impacted in a year by that program? And we're using that to help us shape kind of the value of the program, even outside of what the actual hard costs are going to be for them to run it. All of that is figured in as well. When we looked at naming staff positions, this is one I reached out to Jake. I was like, what's our math? Tell me our rubric for this. So if I want to name, say, a director of nursing position, I first want to set this organization up to have an aspirational salary, right? What they're currently paying their nurse director is not the salary level that they want to always have. That's part of the growth through this comprehensive campaign. And so we've done all of our math based on what we hope that salary is eventually going to be increased to. So we looked at the market kind of averages. We looked at how we can offer someone a really sustainable, meaningful salary to do this work and grow with the organization. We looked at that cost plus a little bit of wiggle room for operations benefits. And that is the price that we set for a 3-year annual gift pledge, if you will. So say it's a $75,000 position. I'm going to let you name it for $100,000 a year. And I'm going to ask you to name that position for 3 years, right? So that's all going into operational support. It's going to help me underwrite that position. If you want to endow it and name that position in perpetuity, we're going to multiply by like 20, right, Jake? So I want to set up an endowment that's going to be large enough to spin off most, if not all, 100% of that salary that I'm going to tie to that position, so that you're going to help us build assets. We're going to earn amazing interest off of that endowment, and it's going to be named for you in perpetuity or in honor of someone that's meaningful. It is not a tangible thing. We're going to make it tangible because it's going to be listed on the website. It's going to be on the name tag. It's going to be represented in lots of ways to honor the person or donor that ultimately chooses that. So those are some fun intangibles that you might want to consider naming too.
Yeah.
All great ideas. I was just keeping an eye on time here. I know the folks in the audience all have important work to get back to, and we're generally trying to keep it to 45 minutes. So I think we may have to have another Ask Me Anything later this year, because I know there are a whole lot more great questions on this list. So with that, who am I handing it off to bring
I'll
this
close
home?
it
Is it
out.
Jake?
Yeah, I can do that. I'll figure it out. Just if you're a non-client and you'd like to learn a little bit more, if you qualified to be a client and want some more direct help scaling up your fundraising, you can either go to the link, which we'll put in the chat, or you can scan this QR code with your phone